So I realized I'm always having this conversation with people at the window when we're doing a transaction, and I thought I'd reduce some of this conversation down to a single video. In fact, I'm going to do a series of just open talks that kind of go along those lines, because fact of the matter is I really struggle with coming up with a succinct dialogue that's like a one-size-fits-all, here's what you need to know to buy bullion and feel confident about it type of talk. So I guess we just have to keep talking. So here's the thing. Virginia and I did a little chat about spot prices in there and and price in general. And this is something I'm always yapping about and giving people a hard time about is their heavy focus on price. Now, I get it. We're all price-oriented because we only have so many limited amount of these dollars that we have to spend, so we got to be careful how we use them. So understandable. But here's the thing. If you're focused, whatever your focus is, it's generally your foundation, right? And everything branches out from that. And the fact of the matter is that a bad foundation, anything built on a bad foundation is a bad structure. So that being said, if your focus is strictly price, it could work against you later on, and here's why. And this is a really difficult thing for people to get their mind around, I find, because of this whole price fixation. And that's the other thing. If you don't give yourself a different focus, then you can't get a new foundation. You're kind of just in limbo. Like, I own this, I don't know why, right? That isn't a good place to be. So price is important in the moment. Currency, I always say currency only has value currently, but it does have value currently. In other words, the dollars you got today can buy you $1 worth of goods, whatever that may be. That isn't true over time. A dollar is a flexible thing, as we always go on about. So I have to keep reminding people about this. Like, dollars are like an elastic tape measure that's always stretching, for the most part. Just think of it that way. So the increments are always. Anyway, let's not get too far down that path. Point is that let's focus on something completely different than price. Silver's an asset, and we should always own multiple assets. This is one of the challenges. This is another part of this conversation I have to get into, and this is where we stray into areas where I start stepping on people's toes and pissing them off a little bit. Some of the things I'm going to say. So I'm going to say that most middle class and working class people don't have a proper understanding of asset ownership. There, I said it. Okay, so if you're offended, good. you should be offended. That's how I get your attention. So, home ownership, one of the worst ones in Canada. We have this false belief that our home is an asset. Well, it kind of is, but it's not much of one. Let's put it that way in my books. And that's a dialogue for another discussion. I'll crap on the home ownership thing at a later date, and you'll see why. Because I'm going to get into the numbers, and when you see the numbers, if you're honest, you're going to agree with me. You're going to look at this and say, geez, I think he's got a point. So anyway, home ownership, great. We all need a home, but that's another topic. A home is a home. We've turned home ownership into something I personally believe we shouldn't have in Canada, or in the world for that matter. A house is a place to live. It keeps you warm and healthy, or dry, or cool, one or the other. So we shouldn't obsess over them, but we do. And we obsess over it as an asset. And in my opinion, okay, we can argue that it is a type of an asset. We can get into that later. Let's just give the baby its bottle. You can have my house is an asset status. But with a caveat, I'm going to crap on that later. But for now, okay, your house is an asset. That being said, how easy is it to access that asset, to use it to get yourself out of trouble? Okay, meaning how can I extract dollars from this asset, use those dollars in a manner that's going to solve a financial problem in my life? Because let's face it, financial problems come up. Just stay tuned. They're going to come to your world too if you're not careful. And they're coming to a lot of people's world right now. So how do we deal with these? Well, access to liquidity. This is something I always talk about, and this is a concept that most people, middle class, working class people never concern themselves with for the most part, is liquidity. So what do I mean by liquidity? Well, to me, the definition of liquidity is the access to dollars or resources that can get you out of financial trouble at a moment's notice. That's liquidity. Ultimate liquidity is something you can cash in today, have the dollars in hand, and deploy them to solve a problem immediately. The sooner the better. Now, how accessible are the dollars in your home from a liquidity standpoint based on that? Okay, you can argue line of credit, right? And you'd be correct, but the line of credit comes at a cost, at a price. Do you want to pay that price? If you do, that's fine. If you don't, or don't have access to alternatives, well, you don't even have an opportunity to pay a different price. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's say you didn't believe that your home was your greatest asset and were wise and bought less home. You bought the home you needed, not the investment home you thought you wanted, because you falsely believed it was an investment. You buy the home you need and you diversify and buy some silver and gold. Now you have a financial problem. How quickly can you solve that problem now if you have some silver and gold? Let's say you drop a transmission in your vehicle. It's going to cost you $5,000 to replace it. You don't have time. They don't have a rebuild available. You got to buy a new one. It's $5,000. All right. You got 2 ounces of gold. You got a problem, and you got a problem, and you got a solution. You got 2 ounces of gold. You can liquidate, and in hours have that problem solved. Not so with your home. Not so with your home. So there's a different dynamic. I'm not saying not to own a home. Don't get me wrong. But I'm saying put it into perspective. And what I'm trying to do is even the playing field here and get people's fixation off strictly on their home as an asset and start looking at other assets. Obviously, my favorite one is gold and silver. It's what I sell. So I'm going to be talking my book. Well, gold and silver in terms of liquidity can't be beat. Look at Exter's pyramid. John Exter was a economist who created a thing called Exter's pyramid of liquidity. Go look it up. It's an upside down pyramid. At the base of it is gold, which also includes silver. Trust me, when we're talking about gold, we're talking about silver too, precious metals in general. Gold and silver, yes, platinum, palladium too, but gold and silver particularly. So when I say gold, I mean both. So he believed that gold was the most liquid asset on the planet. And how can you argue that? Gold can be converted into any currency on the planet pretty much. There may be exceptions, I don't know, Burkina Faso or Sierra Leone, but I would even imagine there you can convert into whatever the currency is that they use. So that's an important feature. See, in finance, there's dynamics. Financial instruments and various different things, cash and deposits of different types and bank deposits and checking accounts, they all have different dynamics. They all have different holding times and holding periods. And so all these things factor into this algorithm of your financial life. And we have to have a proper perspective on how much we're holding in each one of these assets, because in a sense, they're kind of like tools. So what I just described to you, that liquidity play, that ability to fix that transmission, a real world problem that's going to happen to real people. And that's the kind of things I think we need to talk about, is real world problems for real people, not made up problems for made up people, right? That's a thing that happens to people. So how do we solve that if we're a homeowner and that's our only asset? Well, it's line of credit. So now you've added to your cost, you've got to pay that down. And great that you have it. I mean, in an emergency, better to have a line of credit, pay the transmission fee, and get to work next week than not. Right? But if we had a better solution, if we were aware of a better solution and taken advantage of a better solution, we'd be in a different place. And gold, in my opinion, is a better solution. You say, yeah, but Tom, you sold off your investment. Well, what's to stop you from replacing it? So you sell the 2 ounces of gold. I mean, I get people come in all the time. They're depressed. They're head hanging and, I got to cash in an ounce, or I got to cash in a tube of maples. Well, is that all your whole stack? No, that's only a little bit. All right, well, you can still play. You still get to play. You cashed in your tube of maples or your gold ounce, and you had to do something with it. Start rebuying again as soon as you can. Just keep building, right? Be your own central bank. What do central banks do? They, build an account and draw the account down and build it up bigger. You got to do the same. So, personally, I think liquidity is one of the most important features of gold and silver. It's one of its strong points, not just my opinion. John Exter agrees. So consider liquidity as one of your financial weapons in your toolkit, one of your tools in your toolkit going forward. And nothing beats gold and silver for liquidity, folks. So that's my diatribe for today on liquidity and home ownership and all that crap. Thanks for listening. Have a good one.